It's cool how they play without Kyrie. It kind of makes me think about tribes. If a team was a tribe, you need to be egalitarian. There needs to be equal sharing of the resources. And it's a tough position for the coach to be in because I guess he's made some adjustments more recently where at the 6 minute mark, he's taking out Horford, Tatum, and Morris, and he's putting in Hayward, Brown, and Baines to get everybody nice and lathered in the first quarter and kind of intermixing them. And it's created some good dynamics between Hayward and Tatum. So just kind of funny that it makes me think, like, why are they playing so much better without a star guy? So if you're an alpha, you tend to get pushed into this position, but people have to believe in it. So figuratively and physically, there's definitely an alpha. But if you don't co-sign with him, he's just an outsider. So it's kind of interesting the chemistry that they've built without Kyrie, because I don't think that whole concept of too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, not trying to, that's an old timey thing. So don't get offended by that, or too many men, not enough women, whatever you want to say. There doesn't appear people when Kyrie's on the floor taking the roles and working in the spaces that they can. So he's got to learn to be more egalitarian if it's a tribe, because then you just become an outsider.
Right. I have this this little montage video that I'm going to release that I've made of Kyrie style over substance.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of goes into the theory of basically so if you think of passing the ball as a gift, like in the NBA, you're giving someone the ball, you're gifting them something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you always hear it's the thought that counts, right? When you're giving a gift.
Okay. Yeah.
And so is someone giving you the gift or passing you the ball because they want you to have it or because they no longer want it?
Mm-hmm.
And Kyrie really gives up the ball when he no longer wants it, not when he wants you to have it, because he wants you to have it.
Yeah.
And
I was seeing kind of what you were saying too about how some within that methodology, the ball's like rolling at somebody's feet. They're having to pick it up, break their rhythm. And he's not even, I mean, yeah, he can pass. Obviously, he's a point guard, but with that mentality, you're not getting the ball at people's direct spot, do you think?
Right, exactly. And that's the montage. It's like a 3 or 4 minute clip, and it's just inaccurate passes from Kyrie and passes that were so half-hearted. They were like, I don't really want to give you the ball. Let me just toss this over in your direction. Whereas you look at, like a LeBron, we'll talk about LeBron here in a minute, but I think that was one of his elite traits is the way he can rip a pass. He truly gets you the ball. Like he wants you to make it. He wants you to have it. He's putting it where he'll ask. I've heard him talk about it. Like Corver prefers the ball a little higher. He'll ask his teammates, where do you want it? You want it, below the waist. You want it at your chest. You want to catch it a little higher. No, I'm serious. And Lonzo has the same ability. And Kyrie, part of it is he just dribbles so much and he's doing so much with the ball that it's more difficult for him to be accurate. But there's another aspect of it, I think, on a subconscious level, I really believe he doesn't really want to give you the ball.
Yeah, that's funny, man. Half-hearted gifts. I got to admit, one time back in college, I had to get my dad something for Christmas, and it was real janky. Of course, this fool didn't thank me for this. I was working at Men's Warehouse, and I literally just took a tie and put it inside of a FedEx box, no wrapping, nothing, and just shipped it to this fool. And to this day, we don't speak of this event because this fool was probably like, man, this nigga just sent me a tie in a box. Like, what? This is hella whack. So, yeah, I've given some half-hearted gifts in my life, and they don't tend to go very well.
Yeah, the obligations of it. I won't go too much into it, but having 3 daughters, a wife, there's birthdays, there's Valentine's, there's so many holidays. You start running out of things. And I'm decent at it, but it's like I get done dirty amongst the family because it's like especially like with my mom or my dad. And I get it because I've got so many kids, but they're like, well, they'll get something like quote unquote for the family, like it'll be my birthday,
exactly.
But they're like, hey, I got this for everybody. And it's like something that the kids want. I'm like, oh, that's nice of you, But I've kind of aged out of that. But
Right. But it's funny too with Hield. I liked what he said after the game. He was talking about, man, I'm tired of losing. I'm trying to take over. And although Hayward got that fadeaway towards the end, he made a pretty poignant statement. I wanted to see what you thought about. He's like, man, all these fans think that you can guard somebody full court and lock him down. Like, we're NBA players. That's just not going to happen. Like, I contested the shot. He made it. And I did the best that I could. I like that response because it seems like there's some perspective along with it. Can you really lock somebody down bell to bell, coast to coast?
You know, in a given play, it just depends. The saying is great offense will beat good defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the game is designed, especially at this point, where the offense is going to have the advantage. Now, if you put Paul George on your backup point guard and put him and lock him up for 94, it can happen, right? You know what I'm saying? But when you're talking about guys that are more, that are good at both ways and they're similar caliber players, yeah, the offensive player always has the advantage. But I have, Buddy Hield, I'm very impressed with him. And you know what I was thinking during the game, he has some similar characteristics to Klay Thompson.
Okay.
And not visibly, but
dark skin.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen him breathe out of his nose.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I was like, he is a mouth breather. And we all have our beliefs about Cro-Magnon man and mouth breathers and horseman.
He looks like he looks like if he chose to bite you, it would be painful. Right? If he chose to Tyson the ear, that shit would be gone. One snap. But hear me out here. So one, he's insatiable, just like Klay, meaning he will hit 7 threes in a row. He's not don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's Klay Thompson yet, but he is the type of shooter and scorer where if he gets going, like I said, he's insatiable. He will just keep shooting it, and he believes it's going in every time. He'll get greedy. And you like that in a pure shooter like Hield. And then another thing that's similar to the Klay is if most shooters, I kind of can archetype them. They don't necessarily play as hard as like an energy guy or a defender or a slasher, right? Like some of the more athletic guys. Because you can archetype a shooter as being usually they're not quite as athletic, and that's why they've developed into such a good shooter. And so because of the rhythm and wanting to have their legs under them and have their shot, a lot of shooters, most shooters don't play as hard as like a Corey Brewer or, like a Draymond, like an energy guy, right? Or an athlete, a slasher. And both Klay and Hield play really hard for shooters. Like they'll get loose balls, they'll grind on defense. Now Hield doesn't have Klay's size; he's not the one-on-one defender Klay is. But you see how he got quite a few offensive rebounds. Like he makes hustle plays. You don't see your best shooter making hustle plays.
Okay.
So I like that. And I thought, I guess overall with Hayward, that shot's he's still slow, man. He's still slow. He's got the size to figure it out. And the shot went down, but you live with that shot. You live with that shot at the end.
And for my white brothers, what I'm saying, Hayward, decent dude. The shiner is looking good. I guess that's kind of the look now. Yeah, I think Gallinari's got one too with a little chipped up eye. But this young man needs to get some sun. Like he's very
Well, you see he's in the commercials for the League of Legends and video games. I guess he's a hardcore gamer.
Yeah,
especially when he was rehabbing.
Yeah, I got you. But I'm just saying, I know Boston's cold and everything, and y'all aren't blessed like we are out here with the sun out in Phoenix. But
apparently, wifey is pretty strict. Is pretty strict. So wifey, he may have mouth off to her, and she maybe gave him that little something there. But
right.
at the end of the game, so Barnes. Finally, they made this trade for Harrison Barnes, and they thought it was going to put him over the top. But a lot of people kind of thought it was a lateral move in the sense of Shumpert was playing well for them. Shumpert, you could argue, is probably the more versatile defender. Who else did they give up? They went and they got Alec Burke, and they gave up Justin Jackson, the North Carolina kid. Kind of talk about Doug Christie, kind of Doug Christie-ish. And so they gave up some wings for Harrison Barnes. And Barnes finally had himself a night last night down the stretch. He hit 4 threes, and he was trying to will them and get this win. And he ended up taking a shot. I think the play was designed for Hield, and Marcus Smart blew it up. Boston blew it up, and so it ended up in Barnes's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he was a bit sped up. I thought he could have taken another dribble and perhaps drawn contact. The way they were refereeing that game, they were gonna call it. But it's unfortunate. I felt two ways about it because, to be honest, I don't want the Warriors to have to play the Kings in the first round. I think they're scrappy, they're fast, they're a tough matchup. But there's a part of me, I like watching the Kings play, and so I wanted them to win.
Yeah, definitely. And I knew that you kind of were pleased that, I'll never forget it till I die, that Barnes missed that game winner. I know that you probably enjoyed that on some levels. That's what I would think.
Well, yeah, I just didn't want to pay HB. It'd be ironic if KD left and Barnes came back to the Warriors. And I was looking at him last night. He looks like he's continued, to have steady growth. His physique, he looks strong. He's always been strong, but you can tell he's continued to mature that way. He just doesn't, one thing, it's very LeBron-like. Now he doesn't have LeBron's strength and size, but he's LeBron-like in the sense that he doesn't really bend at the hip much. And LeBron gets away with it because he's a freak. But, Barnes has tight hips. He doesn't get low, and that's why his first step is lacking, and maybe he has a lack of shiftiness. But he's strong enough. He's a solid dude. It'll be interesting to see what type of contract he gets. Or he's going to probably opt into Sacramento next year. I think for Sacramento, they've lost quite a few close games. It looks like they're going to fall out of this. And De'Aaron Fox, I think it boils down to, what do you have? Played 35 minutes and 16 points, 13 shots, 7 assists. He's just not ready. Like, he's taken a step, but you can tell that or at least to me, I'll turn on games and he disappears at times. And so I'm not saying he's young. He's going to take another step. He's going to continue to work. But right now, I don't think he's ready to get them over the top and into the playoffs.
Okay. One thing that I like too is they did this thing called 24 seconds or less, where they were interviewing, who was it? Jaylen Brown. And he had 24 seconds to random fire some questions from Caron Butler. And he was asked, who's the funniest Celtic? And he said Rozier. And I was like, yeah, that probably makes sense. And then he was asked, who's the smartest Celtic? And he said Al Horford. Well, what are your thoughts about Horford's game? He seems like he'd have to be relatively cerebral. He just has kind of like a Duncan Penderhughes smart guy type feel to him.
Yeah, Horford's smooth, man. Horford's smooth. I've been guilty of it. A lot of people have been guilty of it because of the big deal he came in on. He's paid like a superstar, more or less. And so he's not that. He is like I always go back to Draymond, but they're different players. They're different for sure, but they have similar impacts as far as defense, settling the team down. And he's more of like a calming effect, where Draymond is more of like a revving the engine. Horford calms the young guys down, but it had.
Do you think he could be like a Badiate? I'm not saying style of player, but that level of maturity, that level of
very, very, yeah. I saw that part too, and you could tell in the Browns' answer he didn't have to think about it. You know what I mean?
It was real quick. Oh, yeah, it was immediate.
Yeah. He was like, oh yeah. And Kyrie is gonna see that tomorrow and be like, but what do you mean?
Yeah, nobody mentioned nothing about him. And I also liked it too whenever they did one for the Warriors. They asked some real funny questions. I think they asked I don't remember who it was. They were like, who would you not want to roommate with? And he was like, oh, Clay. Right off the bat, we'd have people at the house just doing wild stuff.
Dirty draws on the middle of the floor and shit.
And then he was like, who would you not want to be on a long road trip with? And he was like, oh, Draymond and Boogie. They would just argue the whole time and roast each other.
Clay leaves some skidded up Anta draws, some skidded up Antas right on the sofa. He's like, what do you mean? He looks at you dead in the eyes like, what is your problem?
He was saying that Draymond stuff is always somehow in his locker, and he just doesn't understand why this man has 2 lockers. Like, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, but I saw that. And Brown, speaking of Jaylen Brown, I'm looking here at the box score. So no Kyrie, mind you, right? He played 23 minutes, 6 shot attempts. 6 shot attempts, dude. And that's, I know he feels some type of way about that. And frankly, he should get more. He should get more. I'm looking, the shot distribution for them was pretty even. 16 for Morris, 17. Tatum went off there in the first half, where they were really abusing the undersized Kings because they were playing Barnes at the floor. And you got a glimpse of, Tatum. I've been, I felt like the anointment of him into superstardom has been premature, and everybody's future. I had said this before, like, okay, it's one thing to say, yeah, man, he's definitely going to project as an all-star. He's going to be an all-star. But I swear I've heard people say, oh yeah, future Hall of Famer, Jason Tatum. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. But he does remind me of, if I were to compare him to a player, he reminds me of a young Paul George, because he's just really smooth, right? And his footwork is more advanced than Paul George's was at a young age, but he's not as explosive as Paul George. Paul George had more bounce and a little more explosiveness.
Yes.
But he's really adept at using his size. You can see where, and you saw this with Ingram, where he really succeeded at the 2 guard. When you put Ingram at the 2 guard, all of a sudden he's just huge he's just huge compared to these other wings, right? Where if you play him at the 3 or the 4, then he's going up against guys of like size length. And so if Tatum can get, smaller guys on him, you can really see him work that mid-range game and that footwork. But one thing I will say is less is more, in the sense of, I think he's a bit obsessed with the step back. Like, if you look at his percentages, he shoots miserably off step back threes, but he's infatuated with it. And I think sometimes, at least this point in his basketball career, he does a little too much with the footwork. Like, just keep it simple, where he's fluid like Paul George and it's smooth, but like, I think he could borrow a little bit from Carmelo's game as far as prime Melo, just a jab, step, and elevate, right? Yeah. You already have the size, you're already smooth. You don't need 2-3 pivots and a spin, because ultimately that's going to be less efficient.
Well, what's some of your takes on Giles? Some people had compared him to the next coming of C. Webb, and they've seen how he has improved since the All-Star break. And another thing, too, I guess he and Tatum know each other pretty well. They had been middle school friends, and they had switched jerseys after the game. I read something about that, which I kind of have some questions about. Like, granted, these men have washing machines and everything, and they're probably not wearing each other's jerseys, but I know just me, working out, like, I'm not trying to wear somebody's stinky ass jersey, but that's a side note. But
they hang it in their big ass,
right,
1,000 square foot closets. But
right.
No, Giles, man. So Giles, I don't know if it was Tatum. I want to say it was Donovan Mitchell. No, it might have been Tatum. Harry Giles was the number 1 prospect and the number 1 ranked high school player in their class. And so they're AAU buddies, and they've known each other a long time. But he was the guy, and he blew out his knee twice. He blew it out in his senior year in high school, and then he blew it out again at Duke.
2015, right?
Was it at Duke? I don't even remember him playing in college because of his knee. And that's how Sacramento drafted him. There was it's like this dude. It's kind of like the Michael Porter Jr. situation in Denver now. This dude was a top high school dude, and then he's been hurt, and you don't know if he's going to recover or not. And so he's played this year, and it's that people are going to think I'm going a little too far with this. He really has shades of Kevin Garnett in him, as far as like his intensity, and then his face up triple threat package at the high elbow. He just reminds me of Garnett, and his, like I said, his intensity, how hard he plays, and then his skill set. Now, obviously, Kevin Garnett, when he came into the league out of high school, he never had any. Garnett was one of those dudes. He was just an Iron Man. He never had a serious injury, if I can recall. And so, I think if Giles never had those injuries, he would be looking a lot like a young KG. And I like him. I like him a lot. I think he's skilled. I think that he, for him, you always hear that saying from coaches, I'd rather have to put the fire out than start one. Right. Okay. And so for him, he's going to have to learn to harness his intensity, but the skills are there. If he can stay healthy, I think that him and Bagley, they're missing Bagley right now, man. Bagley is just an energizer bunny. And you saw that Boston, let me look at the stats here. It felt like they killed them on the offensive glass. There were several possessions in that second half where it was like, they played, a good sequence of defense, and Boston, offensive rebound, and that becomes demoralizing. And that wouldn't have happened with Bagley in there. But I think, yeah, Bagley and Giles is a combination for the future, man. If he can stay healthy, you can see, I hate to say it, but you can see how fearless and how aggressive he is. You can see how he hurt his knees twice. Just, you know what I'm saying? In the sense of, like, he's so fearless attacking. He has that face up and that jab step like Garnett, and then that extra 2 or 3 inches on his neck to make him a little bit taller. but
Yeah, what's that tribe out in Africa where they put those little loops around their necks?
Oh, that's his ancestors for sure.
You're right.
I wonder if the wingspan matches though. But yeah, I like him. I like his intensity. I like Hield. I like the whole team, man. But I unfortunately for Kings fans, I think that it's looking, they've come up short in these last few games since the All-Star break, and it's going to be tough, man, because the Clippers ain't going nowhere. I think it would take a collapse from San Antonio rather than them fighting in. Like, it's going to have to happen from somebody else. It's going to become out of their control. But I like their core. I like their nucleus. Bogdanovich, I think, needs to be healthy. He plays in spurts. But yeah, I like their squad, man.
Nice.
Anything else about Boston here that I wanted to speak on? Yeah, just the Jaylen Brown touches. I guess Terry Rozier. So the rumor is the Suns really have a hard on for Rozier because they want a point guard. I know they got our boy Tyler Johnson over there. I think he fixed his teeth.
You know what's it's funny because Claudia was actually watching with me last night. And I was like, yeah, Coach always talks about how this cat looks mad dirty. And she was like, yeah, this nigga does look dirty. It's just kind of funny. Like, it's just funny.
Yeah, he looks, he's a nice serviceable player, but Riley and the contracts he's handed out over in Miami, I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole, but anyway, they offloaded him to Phoenix, but so Scary Terry, he's going to hit the free agent market, or he's going to be put into a trade here. Maybe they'll hold on to him because, the writing on the wall with Kyrie. Who knows? It's there's so many moving parts, but I looked at his, 2 assists in 32 minutes of play starting at the point guard position. Like you like his aggression, and he's an energizer guy. You love how hard he plays. But he's got some of that irrational confidence with some of the shit shots he takes, some of the drives to the basket where you're like, dude, just make the simple play, bro. Stop trying to finish over 2 7-footers. So I don't know what he was going to look like if you give him the keys at point guard, like on a night in and night basis. Like, obviously he filled in for Kyrie last season in the playoffs, and he's young, so he can develop, but he's a fringe guy. As far as like, I think he might be better served as the third guard, right? Coming in like a Lou Williams, where he doesn't have to worry about offensive sets and he can just be aggressive.
You know what? I got this feeling. I don't know where it came from, but it kind of aligns with what you just said. Rozier kind of reminds me of White Men Can't Jump, Wesley Snipes. Maybe because they were both dark-skinned cats, but also too, if you're saying that he's just always trying to, do the most, and then after he learns to settle down, then he'll have a bit more success. So I don't know. I just kind of was thinking to myself a little bit about that. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I just don't think anyone should come to the Suns. I don't know, but that's a completely different story.
You might get goat shit. You might get goat shit in your locker. No, I'm okay. But no, yeah, Rozier, he's so athletic and he plays with kind of a chip on his shoulder. And I'll just watch him. He at this point, he does way more than he needs to do. Like, he doesn't keep it simple. You know what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of young players do, especially young athletic dudes that are trying to prove themselves in the league. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, dude, all you need to do is catch the ball, show shot, rip through, and drive. And instead he'll catch, jab step, crossover, behind the back, crossover. You know what I mean? And he's probably watching too much Kyrie. And it's like, bro, chill out. Like, at some point you're going to have to learn to be a basketball player and not just an athlete. But let's see here. So anyway, Boston, Gordon Hayward, the floater off the left foot, driving left, kind of like, a Dirk/KD type of finish. And he's looked better, so he's put together two good performances considering, in that Warrior game, and I've already talked on this on my YouTube channel. So the first time the Warriors played the Celtics a few weeks back, an anonymous Warrior said, man, Hayward is the weak link. Like, he's really hurting them. He can't do shit. And then he came into Oracle and, hung 30 on him. So, what goes around comes around. Now, I've got a couple more things to talk about within last night's games. And those of you that are just peeping this, and I think with this smoother recording, we'll probably throw this up on YouTube as well. So obviously this is meant to listen to. The visual aspect of it is no longer a part of it, at least right now. But so the first game on ESPN was that Sixers-Bulls game, and the Sixers took a bad L. The Bulls, they've been rejuvenated with this trade with Otto Porter Jr. Markkanen is healthy. Chris Dunn is slapping young Trey. And I don't know if you saw that the other day. But anyway, I don't know. I didn't even watch the game. I watched the end of the game. But I just want to call out Brent Brown a bit here because I've heard Bill Simmons question him as a coach. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know about that. And Bill probably watches more Sixer games than I do. But I was like, he came from the Spurs. I like how he communicates and how he motivates his players. And that's, I think, a bigger part of the NBA, right? But his end game situations, we saw it. I saw it with the Warriors in Philadelphia a week ago. The Ben Simmons missing the free throw. The Sixers fouled when they didn't have to. There was time on the clock and they didn't have to foul. They fouled. His end game coaching and situational awareness is terrible because the Bulls are down a basket. Timeout, sideline, out of bounds. They know the ball's going to Levine. They know there's going to be a high screen action. So it's Jimmy Butler, and I believe it was Mike Scott. It was Jimmy Butler. I think it was Mike Scott that was in there, and one of their bigs, whoever was guarding Lopez. And so it was a real simple dribble handoff. Lopez comes and gets the ball. He hands the ball back to Levine, and Levine is moving hard right with his strong hand towards the paint. And Butler and Scott, forgive me if it's not Scott, I think it's Scott. Butler and the other big both switch onto Lopez 30 feet from the basket. And you could say that's just dumb as fuck. Like Butler should know better, and he should. But at the same time, coming out of a huddle, that the coaching staff needs to make sure that their communication is solid. Because it'd be one thing if this was in transition and they got him like, oh, you go up, and they miscommunicated. When you're coming out of a huddle and you know who it's going to, you know what the action's going to be, and you blow it like that. So needless to say, Levine hits the game winner, going strong with his right hand, nice little floater. And I just thought that was terrible situational awareness, and we've seen that repeatedly from Brent Brown and the Sixers team, not encouraging heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a good analysis. That makes good sense. I was just thinking about the role of a coach is really to keep people understanding a couple things. A, what objective we need to accomplish, and what's in it for us. And that's really difficult whenever you're dealing with well-paid alpha males. But you're right. You have to make sure that communication is very clear, and there always has to be that tinge of what's the objective and what's in it for us. So that's why it's so difficult to deal with divas and everything who feel it's all about them. But you're right, situational. I know, more focus in practice.
There's few moments where this is needed, right? You know what I'm saying? Like there's rotations. Okay, so it's like, oh, the whole thing now in the NBA is smaller, but you're gonna go small. You're gonna go small. Are you switching or are you not switching, right? So your rotations, but then there's these moments down the stretches of close games where everybody needs to be on the same page. Situational awareness. Are we fouling? Are we not? Are we switching? Are we not? And you can go ahead and assume your players are talking, or you can gather everybody up and make sure you're on the same page. And Brent Brown, as good of a motivator as he is, it doesn't look like he pays attention maybe to the detail, which is weird coming from a Spurs system. Mm-hmm. Now, did you see any of this Lakers game? I know that's why I was up late, man, because I doubled down on these games.
I ended up going to sleep towards the fourth quarter, maybe, at the 3-minute mark, whenever there's 3 minutes left, because I could just see the writing on the wall. It was almost right after Hart got that demoralizing block. I'm not sure if you saw that, but the dude literally just cupped the ball, came down with it, threw it up court. It just was terrible. So... yeah, my takeaway was, who are these cats on the floor? Like, whenever it got later and later into the game with some of the rotations that Luke seemed to be trying, I don't know. It was just very interesting grouping of individuals on the court. So they have not built very well. And I like what Charles was saying about they might lose because of Magic, which sounds kind of crazy. He's not on the court, he's not playing, but building the team for success. Granted, it's a 2-year project, and you always have to think about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A lot of good business people use SWOT analysis, and I'm not sure if they did their SWOT analysis. Their strength was LeBron. Their weakness, they didn't account for. Their opportunities, they thought of the cat coming from the Pelicans, and threats, they did not think about if this doesn't work, how we're going to look. So their general SWOT analysis from a business standpoint didn't appear to be that long-term or great. Rondo, by the end of the game, was sitting away from the team. But I do respect LeBron's emotional response. You know, you pass MJ, and in my field of work, I see people cry all the time. Like, I'm about to go to work here in about an hour or so, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have 3 or 4 people who just break down crying because that's the nature of the beast. But I very rarely see people cry from overjoy of emotions. And I think the way that that happens is it's a position of being conflicted, where we think of tears and sadness as a negative experience. But once you've accomplished something, you've gotten to such a high state of elation and so many high emotions going that it kind of is conflicting, where I think he's like, yeah, I just passed MJ, but I'm not even about to make the playoffs. So it's just kind of 2 conflicting ideas that I think contributed to his emotional response. So I'm never going to dog anybody for crying or nothing, but, you know, big ups, LeBron, excellent work.
That's I'm going to dog him. I'm going to
yeah, I know. Yeah, you never, well, because you're Mr. Iron Steel, never death or dishonor. But I'm just saying, like, I can understand a little bit why that might have happened. But yeah, Rondo sitting at the end of the bench. Of course, your boy Mark Jackson was like, this is unacceptable. And I would, you know.
That fucking scumbag, Mark Jackson. This fucking scumbag, did you see when he was trying to justify when Plumlee fucking yanked Hart down, and he was like, oh, he was going for the ball.
No, he wasn't.
Dude, it was like, you scum, shut that. By the way, you may want to think twice before you challenge Plumlee around the rim, right?
The hell yeah, this nigga's real big, fool. This fool's husky.
And he's not afraid to put you down. Like, I respect it because, like, look, if someone gets hurt badly, he's going to catch hell for it, and you don't want that. But that's part of being a big brim protector. You want to put fear in guys' mind.
Yes.
And he definitely does that. And the shit was, look, it wasn't like a terrible, terrible foul, but it was definitely a flagrant one to me. Like, and I think because
that was not basketball oriented. That looked like a clothesline.
Because Hart stayed up on the ground, I believe they didn't, whatever, it didn't result in that. And Mark felt justified in what he said, but it was like, dude, stop lying to us. They were showing it over and over in slow motion, him just yanking the fool down. He was like, that's absolutely a basketball play. He was going for the ball. And the other dude, the other announcer was like, but anyway, LeBron. So, what you said, absolutely, you would know better than I. But I understand what you're saying with being conflicted and how that can rise emotions and internal conflict. Really, is what shows the most different emotions overall, whatever it's going to be. But you don't think that was a little bit planned? Like, I felt like he knew, like, he was going to go over, and he was like, nobody's sit next to me. I want to have a moment. And it just seemed a little preconceived. Sure. But it is what it is. You get it. You can't, it is a huge moment. It is one of those bigger stat ones. Given we're living in an era now where ESPN is like, and who was it that was clowning the shit out of that? But they were, it was in the Kings telecast. They were talking about Miles running a game. And they were like, oh, yeah, next we're going to find out how many drips of sweat somebody has in the first half. And it was like, that's real talk, man. Like, some of these stats are way out of pocket, but that is a big moment. I thought that, LeBron always takes an opportunity to have a look at me moment where it was like, everybody clear away from me. Yeah. Let me because, if you were really crying, take the towel off, nigga. Let us see a tear. Let us see a tear from the king. Let us see a tear from the king in LA, man. I don't know about that. But here's what it got me to thinking. And I'm not going to go into this. They're different players. But here's where I think he's going to follow in his footsteps. He said this several times that he ultimately wants to own a team like Michael Jordan. And I could just see him, just like Michael Jordan, just being a terrible owner at least
Oh
for the
my
first
God.
5 years. Like, couldn't you see him with like a big ass gray beard in some flamboyant ass outfit, like on the sidelines, like
Right.
just like being way too hands on with shit?
Yes, I can.
You know, the big old, he's got the salt and pepper beard and just some outlandish chain on with some pants way too skinny. And he's just over there like, you know, whatever's hot at the time, and he's still dressing like that, like he's 25,
Yeah.
and just like he'll figure it out. Like, I'm not questioning, but it's a different game. We've seen over and over again. We haven't seen players turn to owners, but we've seen them. We're talking about Magic, and we've seen them where they head into the front office and they're making personnel decisions. And that doesn't, we've seen it over and over again. Being a great player doesn't necessarily correlate well to making good, general manager decisions.
No, you're right. Because I remember a couple weeks ago, I was asking you if you had like a high school AAU team, would you pick players that are similar to you, or would you try and be a bit more conservative, seek advice from other talent scouts, and build an appropriate team? Because I was thinking as a running back, I like Emmitt Smith because I feel the way I run is similar. But Emmitt Smith is probably not going to be that successful in 2019. You know what I'm saying? They tried that out here in Arizona with a cat who had a horrible year just because the scheme was so terrible. But he's a baller, though. So I'm just saying, like, if you had a squad and you were making personnel decisions, would you fall into finding someone who's 6'4", shooter, slasher, similar to yourself, or would you try and be a little bit more conservative?
Well, I think that, and this may sound egotistical, but I think that for me, I have traits that would fit with the game today. So the game today is about versatility, shooting, and length, right? And so it's relative. I mean, I wouldn't have length and size for an NBA game, but like pickup ball. But anyway, yeah, I would construct, if I had like a club team, I would construct it with guys that 3-and-D players, more or less. Guys, I'd look for length and size, and guys that can spread the floor and switch screens. And then obviously you want to look for, and then you look for characteristics as far as like personality traits. You can't have too many type A's where you're seeing that with Boston now. I know that they've looked good in the last 2 games, but I'm just saying, you want different guys willing to play their role. And then obviously you want somebody at some point, as much as I shit on Kyrie in this, you're going to need somebody that can get their own shot when push comes to shove and things get slow and tight. Right. But ultimately, so let's say you're coaching a club high school team. So yeah, if you could get 4 or 5 dudes that were 6'3", 6'4", moved well, and could all knock down open threes, high school arc threes, then yeah, man, your versatility is going to be crazy. You can get out and run, you can press, you can switch screens, and the floor will be spaced.
Okay, yeah, because you're right. Being on the field or being on the court is a little bit different than making business decisions that are then attached to finances too. So, I mean, I'm sure LeBron is a very smart man, but sometimes you overpay for some scrubs, and now you're screwed for 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, man, it's. I think because they're doing this weird show on NBA TV, like GM School or something like that. Basically, it's this like reality game show where people are up trying to be NBA GMs, and you've got you've got McHale, maybe Grant Hill. You got the NBA TV cast. Roz is on there, and they're basically, it's a show, and these people have to come up with a roster and why this roster will fit and show that they could be a good GM. And you can see there's a clear there's 2 types. There you can really see it. There's the analytical dude who's like, this statistically, these guys will fit completely, blah 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 blah. Like, and this is why this with these numbers. And then there's the person that's like, well, this person's the alpha. And then you've got your you've got your guy that's going to know his role, and these two, and you have to blend it. You can't be too far on either side, right? But you have to. I guess bottom line is, I think with the analytics that are being driven now in the league and some of these guys, I don't think they're taking into account the matching characters, the characters of these guys. Like just look at the Lakers. They fucked that up both ways, as far as like schematically and their skill sets, and then their characters. Like, you probably don't want to put Michael Beasley and Lance Stevenson in the same locker room. Like that was arrogance. And Rondo, like, so, And then the last thing, I don't want to dive too. I want to wrap this up here soon. But the last thing in that Laker game that I noticed was, I know they're down. Not Tatum. Ingram's out, Kuzma's out, Ball's out, and Josh Hart is trying to be a tough soldier for them. But if you see, he is gimpy as hell on his ankle. He has a bad ankle, and it keeps going out on him, and he got frustrated several times. At one point in the game, early on, he shot a step back three, tweaked it, went to the bench, punched the bench. And he was grimacing after every play. And you could see him. There was a couple times he'd point like, no, don't pass to me. I can't finish.
Yeah.
And there was a play late in the game when they were making a push. LeBron tried to throw him a lob.
Yes.
And that was the end. That was it. He couldn't finish it. And they went back on the other end and drilled a corner three. And that was kind of like a rappity rap. And to me, it was like, LeBron, bro, you are, quote unquote, the smartest player of all time. You've seen this kid dragging his ankle for like 2 weeks. You're throwing him a lob in transition. He's 6'4". This isn't like some 6'11" dude that's just catching it and putting it in. And I just thought it was telling, KYP, know your personnel. And we've seen several of these examples over the last few weeks with LeBron hitting the backboard out of bounds, flinging the ball, like just uncharacteristic actions.
That
from
little
him.
dribbling the ball or rolling the ball and then picking it up is not effective currently. I've seen 2 occasions where the ball has been just fumbled out of bounds. It looks cool, but it's not really working.
He'd been spending too much time with 2 Chainz. He'd been blowing that gas with 2 Chainz in the studio, and he's just a little too lax. He's coming out of pocket.
Right.
All right, man. Well, I think this was a smooth one. I hope y'all enjoyed. We're bringing the pod back, and as you can see, we're trying to keep it more current, keep it more podcasty, but we're going to grow, get better with it, add in a little music, a little culture, and keep it, that NBA lifestyle. All right, man. I appreciate you. We out.
Okay, definitely.